Hello and welcome to another episode of Parker's Previews powered by The Hammer. This is the show where I'm going to take stats, advanced stats, analytics, numbers, and data and help interpret and talk about some of the more interesting college football matchups and betting lines of the week, all with the mindset of hoping to be better consumers of college football content and also to be smarter investors as we approach these games and these bets. Make sure you're following at Parker's Previews on Twitter. You're liked and subscribed to the YouTube channel. Follow me on Twitter at StatsOWar. You can also get this in podcast form wherever you get your podcast. Just search Parker's Previews and it'll be up there as well for you, those of you that are auditorily inclined as opposed to seeing the video. So you can get that, on your commute or wherever you go. I have two videos this week already out. One, James Madison and App State, a really fun game. One, TCU SMU, the battle for the Iron Skillet. So make sure you check those out. Make sure that you're subscribed and liking, get those numbers up. That helps me a whole lot. So thank you for that. Let's go ahead and dive into a really fun one. Big Ten matchup here, a game that I've kind of gone back and forth on how I'm going to bet this, but I think I've landed a pretty good spot. So currently have Wisconsin traveling to Ohio State. The line I see is 18.5, 19. It did open at 17, and so if you got it a little earlier, I think you're a lot better off. Ohio State is 2-2 in spread bets their last four games against Wisconsin. They're 3-1 in under bets against Wisconsin. But they're 9-1 overall in the last 10 against Wisconsin for whatever that's worth. Currently, 80% of the money is on Ohio State, of the bets are on Ohio State, 86% of the money. And I am inclined to believe what the public's going here, even though this number has gone up a little bit, made me a little bit nervous with this big of a total, but I'm going to go with Ohio State for an official play here, and I want to talk about the data and why. So I have this projected as Ohio State a 90 to almost 93% win probability compared to just 7.25 for Wisconsin. They're about a 20-point spread here projected between these two teams, and I will go ahead and say this is a little bit misleading on the whole because there have been some play-by-play issues with the data for Wisconsin versus Washington State. Of course, that's a game they lost, and so that's going to matter a whole lot for their play-by-play efficiency. So you might see some numbers here that look a little bit inflated for Wisconsin and what they're trying to do. I'll chime in with some Washington State stats as well, because it is good that Wisconsin beat New Mexico State 66-7, but they also did lose to Washington State 17-14, and those numbers matter as well. So we'll keep those in check as we're going forward. So Wisconsin 1-1 or 2-1 rather, has a disappointing loss at home to a Washington State team and just a really weird game. Wisconsin went 8 for 15 on late downs, and they averaged 7.31 yards per pass, 4.0 yards per carry. They did have 11 penalties for 106 yards, 3 turnovers as well. Only one of those was a Graham Mertz interception, so it's kind of the big deal for Wisconsin's offense has been the Graham Mertz interception, but that's not what really killed them in this game. They just kind of played a sloppy game in a better than you think Washington State team beat them overall. Ohio State, of course, comes in just absolutely guns blazing after they're ranked number 3rd, I believe, in the AP poll. They're 3-0. They've had not really a lot of tests here. 21-10. They really pulled away in the second half away from a Notre Dame team that's kind of trying to find itself. They beat Arkansas State like a drum and beat Toledo like a drum, dropping 77 points last week. It looks like the offense is clicking. They're getting the ball to a lot of different receivers and really able to be very multiple on offense. Ohio State is. So when I look at this matchup, I think that the biggest thing that I'm starting to look at is that Wisconsin, even in their really good game, has not been able to move the ball through the air well at all. 115th in EPA per pass. They are 25th in passing success rate, again, just accounting for that New Mexico State game. But the disparity between EPA per pass and passing success rate, they really didn't look very sharp, weren't able to get an explosive play there. The run game, again, I don't really I think Braylon Allen's a good running back, and Wisconsin's going to try and run the ball a lot here. But they really running over a poor team like New Mexico State really doesn't tip the scales in my favor at all. You look at third and fourth down success. They when you're playing a bad team, if your third and fourth down success rate is low, that probably means that you avoided third downs, which they did. 88.5% of their first downs came on first and second down. But when they were in those third and long situations, only 37.5. A rejuvenated Ohio State defense under Jim Knowles really should be able to keep this Wisconsin offense in negative situations and really force them to capitalize or try and capitalize on these third and longs. I think that's the sweet spot for Ohio State's defense. They're currently holding opponents to 28.13 late down success rate. That's 17th in the nation. Not a huge split pass and rush for Ohio State's defense. Hasn't been amazing in terms of EPA. 65th in passing EPA per play allowed and 53rd in rushing EPA per play allowed. And if you look at success rate, 30th against the pass, 7th against the rush. So have given up a couple big plays. That's reflected a little bit in the fact that they are allowing quality possessions just 37.5% of the time. That is 27th in the nation, but they're allowing 3.67 points per quality possession. So I would be worried about Ohio State against a team that has shown an ability to get a big play off and have an explosive ceiling. Given Wisconsin's low EPA per pass, I'm just not sure they're going to be able to exploit this Ohio State defense at all. So really, really thinking that they'll be Wisconsin's offense is going to try and run a lot, and they're going to be hard pressed to score a lot against this Ohio State defense. If we look at Wisconsin's offense, I also think it's important to just look at the quarterback and kind of see what they're doing. So Graham Mertz, 71% completion, average depth of target of 10.1. If we go break that down by game, though, we can look at against Illinois State and New Mexico, he had 87.5% completion, 80% completion against New Mexico State. Against Washington State, 58.1% completion on a average depth of target of 10.3. They dropped only one of his passes, and he really wasn't able to find where the ball needed to go. Despite having 2.52 time to throw, a pretty decent time to throw, had an 87.6 NFL rating. So in the one game that they've been challenged, Merch just did not look very good at all. That to me is pretty worrisome about keeping up with what has been just an absurd Ohio State offense. So if we're gonna flip the ball on the other side, Ohio State's offense is as electric as anyone. I have Ohio State currently at 5th in EPA per play margin, 1st overall in offense. They're averaging 0.458 expected points added per play. So almost a half a point of value every time they run a play on average. 3rd in EPA per pass and 10th in EPA per rush. They're rushing 42.6% rush rate over expected, is 15th fastest in the nation. So they are letting it fly with CJ Stroud. Understandably, they've got a big staple of wide receivers. Stroud this season, 72.6 completion percent. Average depth of target is 11.0. And he is, 11 touchdowns already through 3 games. So just an absolutely absurd start for Stroud. Looking at Wisconsin's defense, they were balanced, 12th in EPA per pass, 11 in EPA per rush against New Mexico State. But New Mexico State didn't really run very many offensive plays, obviously didn't pass against Wisconsin as well. So, it is hard to bet against the Jim Leonhard defense. But with Ohio State being so explosive through the pass game, and Wisconsin's performance against Washington State, I really think that Ohio State should be able to move the ball downfield, should be able to attack well and run a bunch of plays and kick score touchdowns at least, where Wisconsin is kicking field goals. If you look at target distribution here, Harrison Igbuka, and Cade Stover are the leading target receivers for Ohio State. That's 8 touchdowns between Igbuka and Harrison Jr., both of them averaging north of 16 yards per carry, yards per completion, 4.0 yards per route run, 3.93 yards per route run on both of them. And a really nice kind of comparison of stretching you downfield and getting you short. 8.7 average depth of target for Igbuka and 14.7 average depth of target for Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's a really nice kind of 1-2 counterpunch. I think that's really going to stress Wisconsin's defense to cover all of them. In the rushing game for Ohio State, I do think it's notable that Travion Henderson has been doubtful for this game. Look for Mayan Williams to take over for him. He's still doing fine this year, 6.5 yards per attempt and 4.56 yards after contact per attempt, and as long as only a 25 overall. So definitely some ability to break off big runs there. But I think a lot of that has just been physicality, and he and Dallin Hayden, I think, will take the majority of the snaps. That's a good stable. They'll be fresh. They'll be able to keep up with Wisconsin. Overall, looking at this game, I think that the biggest deal is just that Wisconsin's offense is not going to be able to keep pace in this game. They're going to try to slow the game down. They're going to want to run some clock, run the ball, and I think that when they are put in these negative third down situations, they really don't have a bailout option. They don't have a good strategy for how to attack on third downs. And you've got one of the smartest defensive minds in football in Jim Knowles across the field from you, planning for that as well. So it is my thought in this game that Ohio State should be able to cover this big spread really, really easily. As long as this is under 20, I think you can still get it at 18 and a half at some books. That's the way I would go here for an official play. That just gives you a lot of space for Ohio State to score points, and they move so fast. They're so efficient on drives that even if Wisconsin can break off a big run, even if they can get a special teams turnover or a defensive score, I don't know that their offense is going to move enough and be efficient enough to keep pace here. So I'm riding with the Buckeyes for my third pick of the week, and this should be a really fun game to watch. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Make sure you check out the other videos. Make sure you're following on YouTube and on Twitter at Parker's Previews, at Stats of War, where I'll post games and thoughts and graphics all week. And remember, you can get this in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Parker's Previews. If you have trouble getting that or any questions or anything, DM Parker's Previews and we can definitely hook you up with a link. Until next time, hope your bets cash this week, and I'll catch y'all later.